All right, so back in October of 1910, a guy by the name of Franklin Delano Roosevelt was running for state senator in the great state of New York. And our buddy Frank, he was having some troubles because he wasn't really a known entity at the time. And despite the fact that in New York City, where he was living, he was known and popular by Democratic donors and the Democratic electorate, upstate, he was either not known or sort of reviled. Reason being, he was seen as this silk-stocking city slicker who couldn't possibly imagine the plight of the working man and just couldn't represent the citizens of upstate New York. And so he had to figure out, like, what the heck am I going to do about this? And after lots of thinking, he came up with this sort of revolutionary idea, which will sound funny now, but this idea was, you know what, I'm going to go campaign in a car. And the reason that was revolutionary was because there were very few cars on the road at this time, probably about the same amount then as there are self-driving cars on the road now. So imagine, like, I don't know who Indiana's state senator is, but driving around in a self-driving car. You'd think, like, this guy's kind of a piece of work. So anyways, he comes up with this plan. He's like, this is going to allow me to shake hands with more and more people. This is going to be great. However, when he brought this proposal to his aides, they were like, Franklin, you can't do this. This is a terrible idea. Because there are so few cars, they're seen as these luxury items that only the rich and wealthy have, and it's going to further ingrain the very idea that you were trying to dispel here, that you are a city slicker with a bunch of money. And he pushes back and says, no, I will overcome that. Just let me do this thing. So on a sunny morning in early October, he, along with his driver, who was a piano tuner and knew the back roads of upstate New York very well from going to house to tune the pianos, they hopped in a red car with no roof and started winding their way through the dusty back roads of upstate New York. And what they did was they yielded the right-of-way to every horse and buggy that they came across. And more than that, every time they passed a field with a farmer in it, Franklin would get out in his three-piece suit and expensive leather shoes and trudge through the barley or wheat or corn or whatever it was, go shake the hand of the homesteader, the farmer, and say, I hope I can count on your vote on November 8th. And when November 8th finally did come, it turned out that it had worked. He had managed to talk to enough people and sort of present himself to enough people to dispel these feelings that he was out of touch. And when the ballots were cast and counted, it turned out that he had received enough from upstate to win the election and became a senator in New York City, or excuse me, in New York State. Now, what I love about this anecdote is it seems to capture sort of perfectly what it takes to win an election, particularly a national one, now 100 years plus in the future. And that would be, number one, being able to harness a new technology in a way that allows you to reach out and connect with more people than your opponent. And more importantly than that, to be able to do so in a way that feels authentic. History is rife with examples of this. Sticking with FDR for a moment, he went on to do his fireside chats, which I'm sure you have all heard about in American history class, where he would go into essentially every living room in America and talk to people as if he was sitting right there. JFK understood the power of television better than anyone before him and was able to broadcast himself into living rooms across America and make people feel like he was right there. Barack Obama, more recently, really took hold of mass emailing, big data, and social media in a way to connect with young people like nobody ever had. And most recently, whether you love him or hate him, Donald Trump, we have to give him that he really harnessed the 24-hour news cycle and Twitter better than anyone before him. And I think what you see in all these examples is a man who is connecting with thousands or millions of people, while at the same time making those people feel like he is just speaking to them. And I think this is what sort of we long for as Americans in our politicians. We want somebody to feel authentic. Now, it's probably news to nobody in this room that there's been sort of a rash of, we could call them inauthentic news stories circulating throughout America over the past year and a half. Of course, I'm speaking of fake news. And the reason that these two juxtaposing ideas, I think, have been in my head is because I'm worried that we are on the precipice of a new technology, two of them actually, that are going to enable politicians to betray this thirst for authenticity that we have, and maybe even worse, sort of undermine what's at the fundament of our democracy. So these two technologies I'm talking about were originally introduced to me by a writer for Vanity Fair, a guy by the name of Nick Bilton. And the first one is something called vocal synthesis. So whether you know it or not, you all have very likely interacted with vocal synthesis. It is what allows Siri on your iPhone to speak back with you, or speak back at you. Also, Stephen Hawking, he's one of the most famous folks who has used vocal synthesis for a very long time to facilitate his ability to speak. And while this technology has been around for a long time, the way it has historically worked is you got to bring a voice actor into a studio, sit them down for hours or tens of hours, and have them read thousands of these little nonsense words. Words that then, after these dozens of hours of recordings are done, an engineer has to go into the studio, chop all those recordings up into tiny, tiny, tiny pieces, and then label what they are. Put them into a database with all the proper labels, and then when you or I or whoever has access to this text-to-speech program can type in whatever they want, and it'll make sort of a robotic-sounding version of a human saying whatever the heck it is you wanted to say. This technology, however, in just the past year has sort of entered its adolescence. And like all adolescents, or good adolescents, it's beginning to mature very quickly. And what I'm thinking about specifically is a program that Adobe, the folks that make Photoshop, just showcased about a year ago. It's called Voco. And their hope is that Voco will do to audio what Photoshop has done to images. So essentially what it can do is, I don't mean to pick on you, but let's say that I'm a radio reporter. I stick a microphone in your face for 20 minutes. I ask you some silly questions, and you just sort of talk at me for 20 minutes. I can take that audio file, feed it into Voco. Voco will spend about 3 seconds automatically doing all of that slicing and labeling and databasing. And then in a little text box that pops up in the program, I can type whatever I want, and I can make you say, in your own voice, indistinguishably, whatever the heck it is I want to make you say. So let's say, I don't know, what's something you probably really dislike? We're in Indiana. Like, go Buckeyes go? Like, would that be something that would... Or go Badgers? I don't know. Who does Indiana not like? But anyways, problematic, right? It's not too difficult to imagine the negative consequences of this. But just to drive the point home, let's take a quick look at this.
I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just like, I don't even know. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the. I can do anything.
Look at those legs. All you can see is the legs.
No, it looks good.
Okay, so that, of course, is the now infamous Access Hollywood tape of Donald Trump back in 2005 bragging about sexually assaulting a woman. On top of the fact, or maybe, or I guess what I want to point out is, and what's worth noticing, is that everything vile that he said before he, in fact, got off the bus. And so if this sort of technology was pervasive at the time that this video came out, it's hard to imagine him not saying, it's fabricated, I never said that, somebody made me say that. And that means we're about to enter a moment where anyone will be able to plausibly deny anything that's ever been recorded of them saying. Or maybe worse, someone will be able to make anyone say whatever they want, and we won't really know whether they said it or not. Problematic. But Let's imagine for a second that that video camera had been on the bus. It was trained right on Donald Trump's face as he spewed these misogynistic thoughts. We'd get him then, right? Like, there's no way we're working around that. Well, let's take a look at technology number 2 that I'm thinking about here, if we can see that on the video screen.
We present a novel real-time facial reenactment method that works with any commodity webcam. Since our method only uses RGB data for both the source and target actor, we are able to manipulate YouTube videos in real time.
Okay, as you'll notice here, the man on your right is controlling the face of George Bush. This is something known as facial reenactment or facial animation software. The way it works is in real time, it allows for, with just the program and a standard webcam that you can buy at Best Buy or wherever for $10, it turns on, looks at your face, figures out the geometry of your face, then does the same for whoever is in the pre-recorded video, and then in real time allows who's ever on the webcam to puppeteer or control the face of whoever is in the video. Now let's imagine for a second that somebody has their hands on both these technologies, the facial reenactment as well as the vocal synthesis. Suddenly that person has the ability to make it look like anyone is saying whatever it is they want that person to say. Let's just think of some examples here. I guess Russia could release a video of Hillary Clinton saying, I, in fact, was very happy that those folks were killed in Benghazi. Right-wing extremists could release a video of Barack Obama saying, got ya, I'm not an American, and I am Muslim. Left-wing extremists could release a video of Steve Bannon reading from Mein Kampf from memory, or just spewing it from memory. We're on the edge of entering a moment where any politician, their supporter, or some third-party actor is going to be able to prove whatever narrative it is that they want to prove. I will say before we get too worried that the technology is not perfect yet. It's pretty good, but it's not perfect. For the radio show I work for, Radiolab, we actually got our hands on some early versions of both of these pieces of technology and made a video clip of Barack Obama saying something that he never said. So let's take a quick look at that now.
On the back end now of my presidency, now that it's almost completed, although there are all kinds of issues that I care about, the single most important thing I can do is play golf. Because our parties have moved further and further apart, and it's harder and harder to find common ground. So, when I said in 2004 that there were no red states or blue states, they're the United States of America, I was wrong.
All right, so not perfect, right? But for a group of people with absolutely no technological know-how, and because of journalistic ethics, weren't allowed to pay anybody a penny, I don't think it's that bad. And more than that, let's consider the fact that these things are only going to get better. They're only going to get better, and they're about to be in the pockets of everyone in this room. Because although these technologies are not yet out on the consumer market, from the folks I talked to, we're looking at 6 months to a year before you can go into the App Store and for 99 cents or $4.99 download some version of these programs. And so that brings us back to sort of the dance I was mentioning at the top of this, that, well, we are constantly chasing authenticity. Our politicians are chasing after whatever it is that will scratch that itch for us. And so I think the question is no longer how is fake news going to play out in the 2020 presidential election, but rather, how are we going to react to it? Option number 1, worst case scenario, is we elect someone into office based on completely false information. Or actually, I guess worse than that would be prior to that happening, someone releases a video of Kim Jong-un saying that he has fired a nuclear missile at the United States. The federal government unwittingly responds, believing it to be true, and sets off a nuclear exchange that was never meant to happen. The second option which is an option that I actually had to sort of puzzle over whether I even believed it possible or not, because I'm not super optimistic about this, is that we all no longer blindly accept these mediums as authentic. We no longer believe that everything we see and hear is true. We have to get a heck of a lot smarter, and we have to critically engage with every single piece of audio and video we come across. And if we're able to do that, we will be able to rob these technologies of some of their power. And if we can do that, then at least for a while, we'll require our politicians to find the next thing that makes us feel like they're real. Thanks so much.